it wants to. There we go. Hey, everybody. It's Maggiebot. It's Sunday morning over here and probably afternoon with most of you. And I have my friend Nicholas here co-hosting.
Hello.
Let's see once the picture picks up. It is our intention on hanging out and chatting some games. We've got a couple of topics written down, but knowing Nicholas and I, we will probably just wander off into our own. If there's anything in particular you would like us to discuss, please put it in the chat. We will try and keep a good eye on it. I can see all of your lovely good mornings. Good morning, good morning, good afternoon. Nicholas, how are you?
I'm doing okay.
Yeah.
Some games yesterday, so that's always good.
I saw that table looked crazy.
Which table?
The game day. I saw iPic.
Oh, yeah,
like a picture of like the long tables.
Yeah, we had like a larger than usual showing, and so they got two of those like long narrow plastic tables and put them together end to end into just like one giant alley of board game.
Yeah, whenever we have to get a second table in my house, we have to pull this couch like closer to my computer and put a little card table. It looks ridiculous in here. I can't do it.
But games,
they're important. Yeah, the number of people that can fit in my house is not necessarily that number. It's the number I can accommodate games for. That's kind of how I invite people.
Right, while avoiding the dreaded 5.
5 is my least favorite thing.
It
Rococo. I only play Rococo at 5 because that's a good game to play at 5. So I feel like I've got the strategy at 5 down.
Gil regularly schedules his things to have 5 people. And so I've now developed a list of like games that are actually good at 5, but it's taken a lot of work.
I would love to see that list sometime because mine is rather short.
It's like Power Grid.
Power Grid is on mine.
I forget what else now.
We had, for a while, we had New Amsterdam before we kind of sussed out the best strategy in it. That worked really well at 5. But mostly you just then fall into like card games and stuff, lighter stuff. Yeah. So what all did you play yesterday?
I actually just played Mal Pflaumen, which the English version is Plum, which is still lovely. I think it would be, like most years, it would be my favorite like light little card game to come out of Spiel. But last year there was Jiraku, and Steamrollers isn't a card game, but it fills a similar niche of like that 40-ish minute game to play.
I feel exactly the same way about it. Mal Pflaumen was fun. It was great. But I was playing that and Jiraku and like a bunch of other little games last year, and it was like maybe 5th down on the list. Close, but no cigar. Mal Pflaumen is a trick-taking game, but it's got some weird like objectives. You try and score.
I think of it as it uses the trick-taking round structure, but it's actually an auction set collection game, because the cards that you play are basically bids for order and drafting stuff that was played, and some of them have scoring objectives on them. So you want to get a pair of fruits that are the same, or you want to get 3 fruits that are all different, or you want 2 pairs, but not necessarily 2 pairs of fruit, but 2 doubles.
I will say the art was a little risque. It's a lot of like cut fruit. It looks funky on a table if you don't know what you're looking at.
Yeah, I know that I really liked it because of her botany background, and dissecting fruits is like a thing that she did, so it was very familiar.
It was beautiful though. That would like, especially over something like Jiraku, which is cool, but it's not as beautiful as it could be.
Yeah,
I wish they had updated that art a little.
I like Jiraku. The art is not on my list of reasons. It's okay. It's like not awful, and it's legible, which is more than I can say for a lot of games. But yeah.
Oh man, I learned a game the other day. Some guys came into the store to like sell us games, right? So at the shop, and it was this game, and it looked super old, and I didn't give it much credence before we sat down. I was just like, man, what is this thing? And I played it, and it was actually really good. It was called Rowboat. It's like an older trick-taking game.
I'm unfamiliar.
so they were playing this card game with me, and their other card game was called Hike, and I picked up the cards, and it was literally like a wall of text. And I just told them, I was like, have you guys considered maybe just making keywords or something, like narrowing down how much text is on this card, because it was minuscule font. And they said no one had ever mentioned it to them, like, at all. It was hard for me to read. I was up here and kind of close, and it was ridiculous. But Rowboat was really fun. Hike was not so good, but Rowboat unfortunately just had this really lovely art on the cards. You had like mermaids and surfers and stuff like that. And the back of the card and the cover are done by a different artist, and it looks like it was designed 30 years ago. It's really hideous on the outside. So I never would have touched it if I hadn't played it first.
Sounds like Global Mogul.
Oh, Global Mogul. I love Global Mogul.
What's
and it's the name is so good. Beth, good morning. Sorry, I see people in the chat now. So you were talking before we got on about playing Mogul, just regular Mogul, not global.
Yeah.
Sorry, you said you had something to chat about it.
Yeah, so I got to play for only the second time. The first time it was hindered largely by bad coffee shop lighting, because like I think the cards are generally fine, but the colors they're like okay in good lighting, but they're awful if the lighting is less than good.
Oh, because like, the gray. Oh yeah.
Yeah, like they have the gray and the purple, I think especially tend to muddle together in poor lighting. But yeah, I still like it quite a bit as like a quick little auction game thing with a press your luck ending to it.
Yeah, the ending is not great, but I really, really love that they took they took basically the bidding from No Thanks and they make it into like a rail game. It was really neat. Well done.
Yeah, so the gist of Mogul is that you have the No Thanks style bidding where you either add a chip or you pass and take all the chips that are currently in the pot. And then if you win, you get to pick which side of the card that you want, and second place gets the other half. And the two sides are either you get a share on one side, or you can place a little depot house to score some points at the end of the game, or you can sell all of your shares. And so there's like this pushing the limit aspect to it, where you want to wait to sell until there's like lots of shares out, but there's the risk that someone else will win the auction while it's like close to peak and sell before you, and that'll make you sad.
And then it also has one of my favorite accessories. It like whenever you have your bids, you're putting them into like a tiny wooden bowl, and it makes the most beautiful noise. It's one of those things I absolutely love playing.
Yeah, the wooden chips in the wooden bowl sound really nice, and it's also like I love that it has the curved bottom, so all of the chips like pool in the middle of it, and it's really easy to scoop them out.
I agree. That was just well done. I was so happy that it's back too, because it was out previous, and I don't believe it was in the same size packaging. It was like a smaller box. I really like the new version. I hate the new art, but you know.
Yeah, it's interesting because they also changed it a little bit. The original game didn't have the depot aspect to it, so getting second place in the early auctions was just entirely useless. And later in the game, it's like I didn't really want to share because they've all already been sold, but I guess I'll take a buck or a point, whatever.
Then so. You had mentioned Mogul, and then you'd also mentioned that you had kind of a rough time with Lignum.
Yeah, so I mentioned last time that I wanted to try Lignum, and I've played it twice now, and it's like there's things I like about it. So it's like the simulation of harvesting wood and milling it and selling it, which all sounds fine. And it has this sort of Igizia Tokaido-esque supply path mechanism where each round you're going to pick up stuff from along the path, and there's a lot of free goodies for you to stop and pick up, or you can rush ahead to key points, possibly. But it's a game where everything involves like 3 pieces. So like if you want to get wood back home efficiently, you need fodder for the oxes, you need a wagon, and you need a person to actually drive the wagon. And you can get cut off from at least 2 of those. And that creates some really swingy play. And it's not a game where you can really play. You need to hedge a little bit, but if you hedge too much, then you're just not efficient enough to win.
Yeah, and I found that it was a little frustrating to learn that game the regular way and then add in the rest of the rules later. So I had a pretty unfortunate situation where the regular way of, or the basic way of playing was kind of boring, and I didn't pick it back up for months.
Yeah, the basic game I just skipped entirely because I was looking at it, I'm like, okay, so all you can do is just like get the wood and sell it, and you have they have you simultaneously pick areas that you want to collect wood from and reveal them, and you get to go, whoops, we just chose the same area, so we both don't get much at all. Which is not a thing that I enjoy. So we play, both times I did play with the, you reveal what areas are going to get wood in the following round. So like in the current round, you can plan a little around that. And you just pick a different area. And then we also play with the task card module, which I have mixed feelings about, because on the one hand, it adds a lot that the game needs in terms of like having something to plan for other than just getting the most valuable wood and selling it. But at the same time, it's really swingy because it basically, they roughly double the profit from your sales. So those cards are really important to get. And at least with 4 players, there's only 1 card left at the end of the game. And it was because it came out late and it was something that you need to plan ahead for. And so it just wasn't attainable. But otherwise, all the cards would have been gone.
Yeah, they don't hide that fact. Like they seem like outwardly, you can tell at the very beginning of the game that that's really where all the like meat of the game is. I don't know. Yeah. I had trouble with them.
The only element that I didn't play with was the quote planned work card, which I don't think are going to fix the game for me because they're random special ability type things, and when you decide to get them, you have to pick what future round you want to use them in. So you can say like, I want the special ability 2 rounds from now.
Can you say it that round though?
No, the shortest is next round. You can do 1, 2, or 3 rounds in the future. So maybe the 1 round would be
not that bad.
Yeah. The 1 seemed fine. The possibility for people to like spend a bunch of their money to try to do something 3 rounds from now seemed too likely to cause sads for first time play. So I didn't include it in either game.
That makes sense. This last week I got to play West of Africa finally. I'm so excited. So West of Africa, like in the States, you can only get it through Fun Again Games, and it was like the Hippodice game design winner, and it's Blackfire Entertainment, which is usually like maybe rough rule books, but maybe not. Like it always kind of varies of how much production value and everything else goes into their games. But I will say from the outside, I didn't realize quite how mean the game was going to be. It's got all these islands, and you put yourself into a new turn order based on which cards you're choosing. So everyone's choosing from the same deck, which I always love as a mechanic. And you kind of declare how high the sum of your cards is, and that determines your initiative. And you can get completely blanked out from actions by choosing to do too much in your turn. It was really cool. Did you get to play it at all?
No, I haven't played it. I read the rules, and it seems it's another simultaneous selection game, and I've had mixed luck with Broom Service and Glass Road with one of the groups I usually play with, so I've been a little hesitant to pick it up for that reason. It looks cool, though.
The simultaneous selection is more interesting than you think. So each card is either an action or a place that you can do stuff, and on your turns, most actions need you to have also played where you'd like to take that action. So you have different islands and things. each island has a value based on like how much things sell for or how profitable that island is, and each of the actions also has a value. And so the mixture of the actions and islands that you take give you this sum total of all your cards, and that puts you into, you know, wherever you are in the initiative. That part of it actually seemed to go smoother than a lot of games. There were lots of ways to make that sum total small and to like definitely compete. And there were turns where you got to kind of just spend as much as you wanted because you didn't mind going last, which was not always true in simultaneous selection. So I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, it seems like a really great implementation of that, or use of that mechanism.
Well, and it's just this weird kind of, you want to cultivate things and then sell them, and they sell more on one side of the board than the other, and you have to actually move a ship, and there's this weird like Panamax moving ship harbor mechanic that doesn't get used that much but was interesting to see in a game. I hadn't seen a lot of these mechanics put together before. I'm quite pleased with it. So West of Africa on Fun Again, I would definitely recommend, especially for a little more competitive play. Everyone's talking about archaeology in the chat, which I absolutely love. Archaeology has been my purse game for like 3 months now. Just hang out with me wherever I go.
Yeah, Steve Rollers and like Jodaku have been my two usual. Let me toss that in.
Steamrollers will be mine in like a year and a half.
I know. I want that Kickstarter to run so much.
He's working on it. Like, I've been chatting with him on Twitter. Mark Garrett's, he does a book vlog, so we've been talking over Twitter a lot. But I want that Kickstarter right now. Actually, that segues nicely into my next thing. I did want to talk about a couple of Kickstarters. There's a new trick-taking game. Of course, that's all we're going to talk about today. John Gilmore made a game called Heroes and Tricks, and Ed Barrett is putting it out. I'm really excited about it. I couldn't back it this month. I was backing too many other things, but I'm going to get a copy once it comes out. But what I love about it is that it uses the physical box that you hold the cards in is how you play. So you could play it on the go, kind of like Oddball Aeronauts, which I always loved. So I'm really excited to get more games that don't require tables. Have you seen this on Kickstarter?
I haven't looked at it before, so I'm just like looking at it now, and it looks neat. I did back Trick of the Rails, which is an older Hisashi Higashi game, but it was never really released in the US. And that
was Japan brand, right?
Yeah, it was a Japan brand game, and it had English rules and everything, but it was just hard to get. And it's such a weird game because it's trick taking and stock holding. So some of the tricks you're adding stocks to your portfolio, and in other tricks you're adding things to these different companies that you can get stocks in. So you're like building them up a little rail line. It's really bizarre, and I don't know how much I like it, but it is just so weird and kind of enjoyably so for me, at least.
I had to back it. Said trains, trick taking, Hisashi Hayashi, and I need that in my life. Plus, I like the new art and everything. It's really pretty.
Yeah, the new art is definitely a significant improvement. Like, I have the old Japan brand, and it is like the backs of the cards I really don't like, and the fronts are just super sparse, and they don't do really anything to help you understand what's going on at all. The new edition has like some nice small bits of iconography to sort of help clue you into like what things line up with what, which is always handy.
Yeah, I was really glad that funded, because I had been so... It kind of reminded me of finding something like En Route, which was a project a couple like weeks back that didn't fund, and I was a little worried that Trick of the Rails was going to go the same way, and then it just blew up like 24 hours and it was funded. I was really glad, because En Route looked really cool. I hope they find a way to get that reskinned or whatever it needs to be successful.
I think En Route just So there were a couple of things about the campaign. One was that I think it was the publisher's first time running a Kickstarter, and they hadn't posted the rules beforehand, and stuff like that. And I don't know anyone who had gotten to try it. Trick of the Rails was being circulated in advance of the Kickstarter, so there were some people who tried it, and of course the rules were already posted, and some other stuff like that I think really helped. I was worried that it wouldn't go anywhere just because it is such a weird little game. Like, I don't know how many other people are going to be like, trick taking and stock holding, sign me up. But apparently there's a good number. Hooray.
There's a lot of us out there, I guess. Who knew? But it seems to be like a hard genre to get people to play with me. I don't know what that is. But there's also the Kickstarter. I wanted to ask you about what you thought of, because this is the first time I've seen mass market gaming tables. They're doing board game tables. Did their Kickstarter this week for the Duchess, and it's like a $800 gaming table compared to the $10,000 Geek Chic ones. I'm not backing. Just I won't even know where I'm living in like 6 months. Seattle will be moved so much, but I think it's an interesting project.
Yeah, I'm happy to see so the other gaming tables I've seen are super nice, but they're so nice and so expensive that it almost doesn't matter. They're just so unaffordable. And they're really nice, but they're nice to a degree that I sort of don't care about personally. This board game tables thing, I think they're calling it the Duchess, is like, it has like the slightly inset top, which is kind of nice, and it has the I forget what fabric covering thing that they're using, but that's also nice. And then they have cup holders, which is like the degree of useful, nice touches that hits the sweet spot for me. I won't be backing this just because I live in Manhattan and my apartment is super tiny, but otherwise I would totally
Right. It
consider
did look kind of giant. But
yeah, I have like my collapsible IKEA table that serves me very well.
me too. But apartment living in Seattle is only slightly larger than apartments in Manhattan, so it's just how it is.
Yeah.
But I'm glad to see they're trying to work out how to make these types of things for more people than could afford Geek Chic and all that. I think Geek Chic was intending on doing this at some point, and now they need to hurry.
And yeah, I know a number of companies that are trying to hit this segment. I haven't seen any quite at this low price point, but yeah, it's good.
Yeah, this is like IKEA prices. This is where people will just buy this instead of going to IKEA, I think.
Right. Yeah. And other Kickstarter things, I'm happy to see that Princess of the Renaissance made it.
Did it finally?
Yes, they finally crossed their funding goal in spite of having Canadian dollars as their pledge level, which I think is mostly hurting them just because it isn't prominently labeled as Canadian dollars. Like, you see $72 for a game, and you're like, what?
Oh,
and
it's Mercury Games. That's fine.
Yeah. Well, so it's only like 55 US, which is perfectly reasonable. And their shipping rates are good and everything.
Yeah, I saw it. It was right in the middle of all this, like, Anachrony, and I think Vanuatu had just funded, and another kind of bigger, expensive one just funded for me. So it didn't make it onto my stuff.
We're in like prime season for like Kickstarters that hope to hit Christmas.
Yeah. And tramways, that was the other one.
Yes, tramways.
Yay, tramways.
To me, my trains.
Give me all the
building. Deck building train game with auctions. How could I say no?
It's not possible. Let's go straight in the veins. I did want to talk about. So I think both you and I both keep lists of games from previous seasons that we kind of missed out on, and Essence season is coming up really soon. So there are a couple of games in between right now and when the Essen preview list come up that I really need to get played, and I would imagine you have a couple as well. But my first thing I want to do is plead to anyone watching this, if you can find me a copy of Euro Crisis. It's all I want in the world. I don't think I know anyone that has it, though.
Yeah. I don't think I have anything super high priority for me to hit at this point. I do really want to try Euro Crisis, though. I saw a copy at Con a few weeks ago. I was really hoping to try it, and it didn't happen. And oh well. Yeah. So like my remaining things to check off are Haspelneck, which I've heard that the depth is not so great on that game, but
it's light. It's like gateway light.
Yeah, I still want to try it. Oh, and actually I still have Lignum on my list, but I guess I can scratch that off. And then Iki, I think, is the other one that I really want to get to.
I only have one play of Iki. I need to get more, because I really liked it, and I played it, and then it just never hit the table again. It's been kind of traveling around with me.
Yeah, it has like a rondelish mechanism, and I'm a sucker for rondelish mechanisms.
Yeah. It was the rondel, though. It's not as rondelly as you want. It just is kind of. It's more like what was the Little House on the Prairie game? Walnut Grove. It's sort of like that, where you just kind of, your movement is restricted a little bit.
Right. Speaking of rondels, there's Faris War 1592, I think it is, on Kickstarter right now, which has a rondel mechanism in it, but it's a war game, and so I'm really torn because dice combat war game with event cards, but also rondel.
Yeah, no, I can understand how that goes. War games, they keep trying to get me. I think this war of mine, or there were a couple of them recently that all are starting to grab a couple more Euro components. And I typically don't like war games because they usually use dice combat or methods of combat that I don't find to be fun or easy to plan into. But I did get to play Talon recently, which is kind of a war game, but they did it in space, so it was a little easier to get into. But it ends up feeling like X-Wing without as much movement, but it's a lot like that. You just kind of build your deck and you put your ships out and you try and blow each other up. But the big one I really still have not played, that I picked up even, I own it, it's over on my shelf, is Forge War. I don't know if you've played that.
No, I haven't. I've been a little afraid of it. It's like something that I want to hear from a few more people that I should try before I actually do so. Just because it has like, it's just a mishmash of wildly different things, like with the jumping over people and the resource gathering phase, and I forget what the other parts were, but it seemed like 2 or 3 games glommed together, which could be awesome or horrible for me, and I don't know which. So I know a few people, like, I guess I mostly know people whose tastes don't align particularly well with mine, who have said that they liked it. Yeah. There are people who like it, but I can't.
There are people that like it, but none of the people that I mesh with well have played it.
Right.
So I have no idea. It looks like we're having a little bit of buffering problems with the stream. I'm trying to fix it if I can. I apologize. There we go. But I'm hoping that helps. It looks good on my end, but people are saying that it's streaming really poorly. So
interesting. Maybe YouTube is just having a bad day.
It's YouTube. They do that. But I do like the art in Forge War, and I've read that it's pretty good at 2 players. Like I've read a lot of decent things about it. It just hasn't. It's not the type of game that you really just need to get on a table. It doesn't have like a lot of European mechanics or anything like that. Will sell it to other people. It's just going to be I elbow someone until they play it with me kind of game.
Yep. Maybe when I visit.
Yay! Yes, that's right. Nicholas is coming in the end of July to Seattle.
Yes. I'll be saying
hello. So excited.
I'm playing games, Charlie.
Yes, I think that'll be good. Yeah, it looks like we're just having buffering issues on all ends here. Unfortunate. Blame Maggie. Yeah, that's nice. Thanks, Seb.
It's all the games clogging the intertubes.
It's the games.
We opened too much Kickstarter stuff, and it's just all blocked up with big, bulky cardboard boxes.
I have lost the chat. They're chatting, and I can't tell what it was about.
Yeah, I think it was. Oh, I think it's about Spyfall. The Spyfall cover.
Okay. I was like, wait, I don't understand.
The Spyfall cover is a cover.
It's that guy in the glasses, right?
Yeah, and the random woman who like isn't in the game but is in the cover because
they needed a woman on the cover.
Because that's where you put women in your games, is on the cover.
Well, to be fair, that cover was probably designed by someone who didn't know what the game was, really.
Right. Yeah, it's like those awful paperback fiction book covers that it's just like the artist was given like 3-sentence description about the thing that they're supposed to do art for, and they're like, ooh, okay.
They're like James Bond, but not so we'll get sued. Like,
yeah. I remember there was one particularly awful Star Trek paperback that I read where a key part of the plot were these flowers that did something, surely, but they were described as being like large enough that you could curl up inside of them, and on the cover they were like these tiny little flowers. It was
they didn't mention that it's only that the fairies and stuff could curl up inside them. Regular sized people couldn't.
They're space fairies though, because Star Trek.
You read Star Trek novelizations?
Yeah, a few. I've read a lot of trashy science fiction in my life.
I had trouble finding science fiction I like because I didn't read any of the classics when I was younger, so now I just kind of have been bouncing around between classics and new stuff and trying to find good stuff, and some things that people have nostalgia for I don't get, like Hyperion. I don't understand it.
I haven't read that. I did a thing a couple of years ago where I was like, I'm going to try to read through various award winner books, or at least nominees, as like things that people were at least paying attention to at the time that I should probably try out. So I finally got to read some more I'm not sure I'd ever read an Asimov book in my childhood, but I finally read like a novella at least of his and some other.
I'm sure you read I, Robot, right?
No, I didn't. My brother did and loved it, but because my brother read it, that meant that I never read it because he's all full of spoilers. He's perhaps most notorious for spoiling 2 movies with 1 sentence. By making a comparative statement about their endings. It was really impressive.
I'm impressed by that. I, Robot, I would put that on your reading list. Of all of the hyped up classic sci-fi stuff that I've read, that was probably my favorite, and it's short stories, which is always good for me.
Path of Glory. I don't know if I know that box cover. I'll have to go be horrified, Charlie.
See, for box cover art, like I had trouble with Labyrinth. That was a weird one for me because it's so right now, and it feels icky to have it like on the store shelf right now. It's weird to me, but all war games kind of fall into that for me. I have troubles with them.
Oh, okay, right. Paths of Glory is like, it looks sort of like some clip art between a bunch of names.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It looks nice from afar, though. Like, it has a nice silhouette.
Right. I could see what they're going for with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess last on my Kickstarter list of things to talk about, so I didn't realize, like, kind of the outside opinions on Salem, which is now starting to come out finally after probably 5 years or so. Salem was this game by Josh Gavin, who lives up here in Seattle. So I had kind of like met him and played the game and stuff like that, and I backed it. And then I kind of forgot about it for a few years. Ran into him at a coffee shop, and I heard about a lot of the troubles that the game was going through. And so I was really I was celebrating the other day that he was finally getting like physical copies are coming out at Origins, and then they're going to get shipped to backers. And I talked to someone online, and they were super upset. Like, they were really mad at him about the way that he treated the whole situation. I I felt kind of bad because I come from a, like, I know this guy, like, he's from here. It was really unfortunate on our end what happened, but I didn't realize, like, the communication outside of that was not great.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of like people have trouble and they decide to just not tell anyone and hope to make it better before they have to tell anyone anything, and that basically never works.
Well, I think it's embarrassing. You know, you do this thing, you get onto the Kickstarter with your first game, and it gets funded, and you're really excited, and then anything bad that's going to happen, which this game just went through every pitfall possible, and it has to be a little bit embarrassing, especially when you have like other games came out between when that funded and now. He had Fool's Gold put out by Passport, and I feel like he probably wanted to kind of keep on the positive of, yeah, my other game is out.
Yeah, I totally understand. It's just it's one of these like understandable things that perfectly good people fall into.
But I do feel bad that I didn't realize how bad it was. But I'm really notorious. I don't really read Kickstarter updates or anything. I kind of let other people tell me I should go and read one specific one if there's something interesting going on. But I can't keep up with all that. I've got too many things that I'd have to read.
Yeah, there's a discussion of like good board game covers in the chat.
I know. I was trying to think of my favorites. I love Luna. Luna has one of my favorites.
Luna does have a very nice one. I'm eyeing Forbidden Desert from here, which I actually like a fair amount. It's not super amazing, but it's like evocative of the game and actually looks nice.
There was one that used to be on like clearance everywhere all the time called The Swarm. I always really loved the cover of that. It's so pretty.
It's a I forget if it's a Crommer Orc Peaceling game or both of them. I've been like mildly interested in trying that one for a while, but it's like this super weird theme, and the gameplay is also a little strange.
Well, and it was always $5, so I don't trust it, you know?
Yeah. Eric is saying that he stores his games vertically, so you can't see the box covers. And I do the same, but I have a memory for box covers for no good purpose, really.
I store mine. I store them stacked, but I guess just if I hear a name of a game, I can see the cover in my head. I just don't know if that's because I've been hanging around the store too much.
No, it's like a thing that people do.
All I can think of are game covers I don't like. That's the problem.
Right. I had a thing that I liked, and now it's fallen out of my head.
Yeah, I'm looking around. Most game covers I absolutely don't care for, but I guess, yeah, most of what I want to mention are all prototypes that I've seen box art for recently. Partial photographic memory is probably maybe what that's called.
I sort of like the cover for Terra Mystica. That's okay.
I don't like the art in Terra Mystica. I don't like the color scheme. It's like this washed out pastel. I don't know.
I can see that.
But I guess it is evocative of the gameplay, which is somewhat important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely have a thing against game covers that like bear almost no relationship to the game. Like I understand why they don't usually bear much relationship to the game, because they're really there to just sort of pull you in and get you to turn the box over and learn more about it. And they usually do accomplish that well, but
yeah, I think the best types of box covers, and I don't really care for the game, but King of Tokyo does a really good job of getting people to flip the box, right? Like that game makes you want to pick it up and learn more about it. Rampage or Terror in Meeple City did the same thing. Those kind of like bigger, flashier covers, to me, those are like the ones that make people pick them up. Or Cat Tower, anything like kitschy like that.
Air games, which I tend to like, are notorious for having like the dour white guy on the cover in medieval garb or whatever, like just stepped out of the Ren Fair, but very unhappy about it because his popsicle was not as tasty as advertised.
Give me 3 seconds because I got to show you this hidden board white guy. Hold on. Okay, so you think that there's no bored white guy on this cover, but there totally is. It just takes a while.
You have to. It's like a rule.
I died when I saw it. I was cracking up, and we just made, because he looks dour. It's kind of sad.
Just like train games have to have as many locomotives as they can pack in.
Right, like 3 trains and like one in the background and a couple of train tracks somewhere.
Yeah.
We swear it has trains in it. Oh my gosh, they're talking Mottainai in the chat. Did you? So I played Mottainai maybe 3 or 4 times before I just gave up on getting people on my side with it.
I've played it a few times. The cover is a cover. It's a weird game, that's for sure. I think it's like probably my biggest problem with Mottainai is that it is a weird game, and it's also such a pain in the neck to teach people and get them into it. It's like a rule set that I keep going back to and thinking about how to explain it better. And I think some of the keywords that were chosen that were supposed to be evocative of the theme were not so good at helping you explain the game. Although they did improve the wording quite a bit from the public playtesting period, because I read some of those early edition rules, and they were even harder to follow. The actual rulebook is pretty okay.
It took me, so I did the prototype, and then I had the copies come in from the Kickstarter. I think it was Kickstarter, but I had both the little one and the big one come in, and trying to teach that out of the book was impossible. And then the first time I taught it, no one understood the scoring at the end. The second time I taught it, everyone understood the scoring really well because I focused on it, and then kind of we muddled up like how to pray and stuff like that. It's really hard to keep all of those pieces together for people. I don't know if there's a good way to teach it. I've tried.
Yeah, it's one of these things where if there are at least 3 somewhat tricky things that you need to explain, and they don't really come together at all, which sort of reminds me of Burano, which has other issues, but among them being that the rules are just hard to teach people and get into. They're just hard to remember and synthesize. I keep contrasting that game a lot with Mombasa, which also has like a bajillion things going on, but they all sort of like link up to each other. So you can go from this and be like, oh, and this touches on this thing and explain that, and then like be like, oh, and this comes back to the other thing, and it kind of works.
I would say Mombasa is actually pretty easy to teach. So your mission now, Nicholas, is to let me know whether or not I should be purchasing Burano when it becomes widely available in July. Because I'm pretty tempted.
The answer is no.
Don't say that.
It's a game that makes me really excited for whatever their next game is. And I will totally bring it with me, and we can try it. And if you like it, that's great. Like, I'm always happy when people like games. I found it. Yeah, I think the sin of Burano is there are 2 big things. One is that it has like a bunch of mechanisms, and they all score separately, but they don't really come together. And it doesn't like. I was hoping that'd be more like Trajan, and it isn't, sadly. And the other thing is that there are some broken card combos. So there's like something that lets you ignore a restriction, and then something that lets you score points for that.
Okay.
But it's like the sort of thing that I think is neat to see how it works.
Right. I kind of want to just poke around with it. It's got that cube thing, and like, so most of the folks that I heard didn't care for it because the theme didn't make sense, or there were like lots of little mini games and nothing kind of hooked up. And I was like, oh, that's fine by me. But once you say like unfair card combos, that's when I get sad.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the idea of the pyramid. I like the idea of the color matching wheel. I find the trying to spread through the Lace Workshop Tetris pieces kind of neat. The rooftop stuff is all cool. The turn structure is like horrendously complicated because it's one of these games where like you can do up to three actions, and an action is just like pick up a cube or place a cube, or I forget what the third option is. I think it's place a roof. But if you do like the place a cube, then that causes an action, and that action has like 5 sub-steps. Yeah.
So, well, and I think there are other games that kind of do that. Like Ships is one of those that has a very simple turn structure. It's like one thing, and then that one thing that you do causes 6 other things to happen, and you kind of have to know the exceptions and how all the other ones work. I do agree with the chat that Roads and Boats you should play until you get it right. Sorry, I'm reading them talk about Roads and Boats, and I kind of want to touch on that because
Yes, please do.
So Boats and Boats is one of those games. It is a Splotter game. It's giant and kind of sprawling. But what's really nice is that it scales really beautifully between player counts. So we got to play a bunch of it when I first got it. I think people should play that until they know it really well, because that game is hard to break. We've spent a lot of time playing that game and have never really found broken combos or anything that doesn't work well inside it. The only thing that we didn't care for, I think, was one of the ship expansion pieces, but I don't really remember what it was.
Yeah, that was a game that had like 3 or 4 expansion module-y things tacked onto it. I still haven't actually gotten to try Roads and Boats. I really, really, really want to. I think the drawing part is tricky.
Well, it's not significant because you've got someone like me and Brian's playing, and he has a familial trimmer, and like it's just literally like how to get from place to place. You could technically like put string or pipe cleaners down instead.
Yeah, that's what I've been thinking of doing. It's just the covering of the board, actually. Like, it's not the drawing part that worries me as much as like trying to actually get it assembled and everything.
Yeah, it definitely kind of, because it was my first time ever using an acrylic overlay on a game where you draw on it. I'd never even seen that, so I just had like painter's tape around my house, and I just taped it to my table. And of course, you need 2 geese and a paper to research. How else are you going to do it?
You need 1 goose to actually do the experiment, and the other goose to monitor the first goose, and then the paper to write the results. It's very simple.
Right, that's how science works. But I think we're going to start making an epic list of games that we should play together when you get to Seattle. We could put Roads and Boats on this list.
Happy to.
Because I think you're here over a weekend, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So I think Roads and Boats would be a cool one for you because you can your brain would just be so happy. The kinds of things that you can do in that game are amazing, and you can kind of you build stuff in the game for people that haven't played it. You build like mines and stuff to get precious gems, and you do research at research plants, and everything you build could technically be used by anyone at the table. So you're on this map, and you're hoping that people kind of leave you to the 2 or 3 things that you really need to do right then. But nothing is yours, nothing belongs to you necessarily, and you just play to a specific threshold of points. Once that's reached, that person wins. And the best mechanic in the world is in this game. When you have geese in the game, they follow you. Literally, they just follow along behind you. But if you were to like leave them somewhere for a couple turns, someone could just run up and then lead them away, and they would be their geese then. It's amazing.
Cool.
Yeah, but definitely without the expansions, the base game is so good that it doesn't need anything else.
I managed to get a copy a while ago because like I won a cool stuff gift certificate thing, and at the time they had copies. I was like, yes, come to me, my pretty.
Although Indonesia is coming out back again in like a couple months. I've got it pre-ordered, but I also have 2 people telling me it's not as good as like the hype. And I
don't know. I'm going to teach it a few times in a few weeks, so I will report back. But yeah. I'm also just excited because they're going to fix up the board for Indonesia, because that was one of the big things with the first edition, is that it's really hard to tell what parts of the board were considered to be a region. And also they're replacing a lot of the little cardboard tokens with wooden pieces. I'm sure will be adorable.
I'm so excited for that. Oh my gosh. I love Splotter games, and I've only played one so far that I didn't care for. So they've got a pretty good ratio for me.
Yeah. Yeah, they're on my short list of publishers who are like, if you are putting something out, I will just pre-order it.
Yeah.
And be done.
Splotter, Spielworks. There's a few of them. Just yep, cool. Give me that game. Because even when I don't care for their games, it's not because they're bad, and it's usually not that the game is broken. It's just something that doesn't mesh up with how I like to play games.
Mm-hmm.
Like Food Chain Magnate was not for me. I didn't care for it at all, but I do see it as being a very cool tech tree game.
Yeah, that's one that I want to play more, but it's a hard teach, not because the rules are actually hard, but just because it's like your first game will be suffering if you're playing with anyone who's played before.
And people will play it wrong, and you'll have to re-explain the rules 6 times, and that first game of that one is rough.
Yeah, I know a few heroic souls who'll be just teaching it at Dice Tower Con, and sending out and just facilitating the game, which I think is the way to go. Like I taught a couple tables of it that way, and it works really well because then you can just walk through each of the little steps and make sure that no one screws up. But it's also like a lot of time to just sit there for like 2 or 4 hours.
Just shy of 4 hours. Yeah, I have thrice played Food Chain, gotten all my actions kind of basically taken away that I can't do anything, and there's still hours left in the game. And I just sit there and go, okay, is it my turn? I hire this guy, but I have to fire him because I have no money. Like, just bing, bing, boom.
Yeah, I've been... They have like a suggested simpler game. I've been trying to figure out some form of that to teach people like their first time. Because particularly longer games, I often want to figure out a way to like present the game and have them play through it in like 90 minutes or at least under 2 hours and like actually get a feel for it. I've been going through a similar thing recently with 18xx games because those tend to be, particularly for your first time, like are going to be like a 5-hour game. And so I've been hunting down ones that are 3 hours or less, hopefully, even for first timers.
That makes sense. But you taught me, what was it? It's not really 18xx, it was Poseidon.
It's Poseidon. Yeah,
that's a really nice intro.
Yeah, and I think Poseidon does a good job of removing one of the harder things to teach, which is the tile stuff. Sure. Which is like a cool and interesting part of the game, but at some point you just need to get people in there, give them a taste.
I don't know. They're talking in the chat though about Millennium Blades. So Eric, I will say you need Millennium Blades in your life. It's weird and cool, and that type of game. I've not seen this particular use of card fighting and real-time deck building and trading, and like there's so many elements of it that are amazing. I don't think ultimately it is a great strategy game. I would put it very low in line of strategy games, but I put it up there with like Robo Rally and Chaosmos and those kind of like really fun things to explore. And it has a hell of a lot of content in it. I don't think you would get bored of it for a really long time. Yeah, you need it. You need it, Eric.
Yeah, it's a game that I really want to... like, there's a type of game that I enjoy, but I currently don't have anyone to play with, and Millennium Blades is part of that with weird, crazy cards and things.
All right, I'm putting it on the list. The number of games that we'll be saying that we're going to play is giant.
There'll be like 300 games, and it's like, well, if I was here for 6 months, then maybe.
Going to be a good couple of days. See how much of your time I can steal.
Mm-hmm.
You don't... What do you mean you don't need any games right now? That's crazy talk.
I keep trying to tell myself that, and then Kickstarters happen, or there's like some game that I've been looking for months, and
I swear they follow me home. I don't even try.
Yeah.
I still haven't cracked Mars Needs Mechanics. I got to get that played this week. I keep putting it off for some reason.
I gifted it to someone, and they played it without me and decided that they didn't like it. And I felt a little bad about it. But at least it was like the sort of... They were like, this is a good pick. It sounds like something I would like, but yeah, gifting games is hard.
Gifting... games is really hard, especially for gamers. I always have to ask people, I'm like, please just don't get me games. And unless you have heard me from my mouth say that I would like it and I don't have it on order right now. Because I have gotten a lot of copies of Ticket to Ride as gifts. I've gotten some Splendor. I've gotten a lot of games.
Yeah, I did the Secret Santa thing on BGG a couple years ago, and this past year I just did it as like a backup Santa thing, which was great fun. And I was able to do it, which I feel really fortunate about. But yeah, it's like if I want a game, then I probably have it, or it's just super obscure, so you haven't heard of it. That sounds really elitist, but it's kind of true.
There's the amount of games that you and I have played or own that are not necessarily easy to get where we live.
Right.
Are many.
Yeah,
European import. But I do get some flack for that sometimes. I'll be talking about games and I'll kind of spout off a bunch of names of them. And I have a hard time remembering that not a lot of those have made it to more than just kind of very niche media.
Right. Or they were like they're out of print and you can find them, but like you have to know the right shop to go to.
Right.
Yeah. If it's new and widely available, I've probably tried it because that's what I like to do.
Well, I tend to I narrow down what I keep at home, but I buy a lot of games, so I just find like either trades or swaps or auctions or those types of things. And I'm going to a game swap in a couple weeks, and I've got maybe 30 games to take with me. And people are already on there going, "Why are you trading Quadropolis?" I'm like, "Because it was a good game, but I'll never play it again. Like, it's never gonna get on my table."
Oh, Quadropolis.
It's nice.
It's pleasant. I think I have concerns.
I thought it was really good for what it was. It's a really well produced thing. I like the advanced play better than the original, and I won't need that in my life at all, ever.
I've played the expert game now like 5 times, and I'm pretty convinced that it's not, I don't want to say it's a strategy that wins, but there's like an archetype to follow that is hard to beat.
Is it Office, like the yellow buildings with... Gosh, I knew this. If you had asked me this 3 weeks ago, I probably knew.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil it for people.
Okay,
and also, like, I don't know, it's hard when this stuff happens because, like, I don't want, like, there's definitely elements of groupthink where if people think that the strategy is hard to beat, then they just sort of stop looking for other things to try. And I really, really care a lot for people trying new and different things. Sometimes that person is me, and sometimes it's when I'm teaching people a game, and then sometimes I feel bad because it's like an extreme strategy. But yeah. Anyway, I hope to hear more about Quadropolis strategy from other people to get me to play it again, maybe as like a pleasant little game. I loves it because you're like building up your little city, and that's something that she enjoys. So
I put all building games against Sunrise City because it's probably my favorite. And if it's not as good as that or better, then I just don't. Like, Sunrise City was really fun at 4 players. It's really good.
I have that thing with, I do something similar with like all area majority games in El Grande. It's like El Grande is like a really high bar.
It's hard to beat the best, but...
Right. It's kind of amazing to me because, you know, like some of these games are just made so long ago, but in a lot of areas, I feel like board games are still, they're certainly doing new and interesting things, and oftentimes I feel like they're doing better things than they used to.
I think people have learned how to clean up design and clean up little gaping holes that didn't matter before, I guess. Like, if there was a best strategy or there was, you know, something imbalanced, people just went, "Oh, that's the thing that we're going to fight over." Like, they knew about it and didn't care, but now if I see imbalance in a game, I'm just like, ooh, it's discordant to me. I can't stand that.
Oh, yeah, there's someone's asking about if their board game cafe.
I know, I was going to segue into that if I could. Hey, Eric, so Welcome. You can tell them welcome to Seattle. There are literally, I want to say, at least 8 game cafes with libraries here, if not more, and that's only in Seattle proper. So the ones I work for are called Card Kingdom and Mox Boarding House. They're the big fancy schmancy ones. We have a full retail tournament space and either a cafe or a restaurant, depending on which location you're at. And then if they're in town, they can go to Ray Gun Lounge, which is more of a cafe than a game store. If they are north or south or wherever, there are tons and tons of them here. Meeple's Games in West Seattle, Zulu's Board Game Cafe in Bothell. There's a place that's just kind of like a nerdery called AFK Tavern. But you should send them my way for recommendations anytime. There's a ton of stuff up here.
Yeah, I'm really jealous because New York City is gigantic, but we have one, maybe 3 now. There have been some new places opening up recently that I haven't made it out to. But yeah, it's kind of unfortunate. I think mostly just because the real estate is so expensive that it's hard to be profitable. Like the main one that I know of is right by a university, so they get a lot of traffic from students coming in, and they charge a cover.
Is that the Uncommons?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Which I would really like to go to more often if I could be sure that I would get a table there. But it's one of those, it fills up at a lot of the time, which is great for them. It just makes it less likely that I'm going to want to plan to meet friends there to play stuff.
Well, my business has struggled with that from the day we opened. We're like a 10,000 square foot store, if you include the cafe. And from day one, we've had trouble with people not getting a table in time. Like, there is always a wait in the evenings, and it frustrates people because you really want to be able to like plan and make a game night and stuff. But it's a great problem to have. Just Seattle is so busy. Like, you put together something cool and then people flock to it. It's this weird kind of trend town where as soon as something's popular, it gets completely overrun. I don't know if that's the same as everywhere because I haven't lived in many cities. I've lived in mostly rural places.
Yeah, like when I lived in the DC area, well, also I lived in DC like 6+ years ago at this point. So board gaming in general was just in a very different place then. But there's like one-ish board game store, I think, in the area. And they did have some tables up that you could play. Eric just mentioned Game Castle at Mountain View, which I was actually at a month or so ago. And that was pretty delightful, or at least the one that I stopped at. They just had like a huge amount of table space, and then the usual shop and board game library, and then snacks that you can buy, which is a solid formula.
Yeah, no, I think it's the new thing. Like, so I will take some hipster cred that Card Kingdom and places like Snakes and Lattes were some of the first places to do those big, fancy hybrid stores with lots of things to drink or eat. But I do think that it's kind of the only way to be now is to make sure that you have some sort of food or drink service and some place to play the games, because otherwise Barnes & Noble is going to push us all out. Like, they could just do it so much cheaper and faster and better, and they're even starting to run events now, which I had myself a little panic attack the first time I saw that, because at least before I could be like, well, they're Barnes & Noble, they don't teach you the games, but now they're hosting like game nights.
Yeah, I definitely agree. The only stores I spend much time in are the ones where like I can actually sit and play a game and buy food and stuff. One of the shops used to run a board game night, and they charged cover, but then they would put that into a raffle for store credit, which I thought was really smart. Yeah, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, a lot of people saying they don't really have a lot of game stores in town. Just so y'all know, before I moved to Seattle, I had never even heard of a Euro strategy game. So where I'm from, we had KB Toys, and that was about it. And that KB Toys closed. And there's one comic book shop, but they were really icky, and I couldn't go in there because they just gawked at me the first time I tried to go in there and learn about HeroClix, and so I never went back. Well, this is, how many years ago, and people had not figured out that gaming could just be for anyone. Who knew? And so this is super small town. I understand it.
Someone asked for a most X board game, which is like the bane of my existence type question. If you want me to list off like a dozen board games that I think are cool and innovative.
Wait, what most X what?
Most innovative board game so far this year. And I like,
ooh. That's a good question. One? Just one?
Yeah, it's like that. That's gonna be like a give me a few hours and I'll get back to you.
I guess, and even I don't really like it. Time Stories, I think, was innovative this year.
I'm trying to just like remember what came out this year, honestly.
Right. That's so hard. No, I think everyone knows about Time Stories, but they made kind of a basic box that you then imprint with different scenarios and stuff. So you buy the core set, and then you'll have scenarios to purchase for the life of however long people want to make scenarios. And I always find that to be super fun. I don't think it was the first game to do it, but I think it was the first game to make it in a system kind of the way it did. I thought it was cool.
Let me just see what I've played this year. That will help.
Yeah, I know. I want to go like look through my game piles now. See, that's the hardest thing about most X questions. Like,
yeah, particularly with the time frame.
I would say that innovation for me, it's like how they use mechanics. Like Rococo has a really innovative use of deck building. I can't just, because everything is reminiscent of something else is something else, something else. So it's the mix of how things get put together.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm having trouble finding. I think it's also. I'm struggling with this question actually partially just because we're relatively early in the year and not much has come out.
That's why I was so impressed. Joel Eddy did a top 5 of 2016 already.
Yes.
I was like, you have 5 games that you really love from this year? Because I don't know that I do.
Yeah, I know that I really liked the intersection or the spatial drafting of Deluvia Project and Quadropolis, which I have a faint tingle that I've seen it somewhere before, but I can't. Targi is definitely related, and oh my gosh, I love that game so much.
I love Targi, and that was an innovative game. That is an innovative use of, people have called it worker placement, which I don't necessarily, I guess so.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely action drafting.
But it's so well done and just so simple, smart. I love it.
Yeah. I played Xanadu, which actually came out a few years ago, but was recently republished. And I don't actually like that game, but I find the idea of having cards that are multiple use in the sense that you can build them as structures or send them to other people's things as workers really neat. And more specifically, it's not just that you're like discarding the card, it's that you're interacting with that structure in particular to get something that you hopefully need.
Right. Yeah. I think the second anyone uses multi-use anything in a game, I always get really excited about that. Mystic Vale, I was just going to mention that, Patrick, but I think for innovation, like even playing something like My Village the other night, which I didn't love overall because I was playing it 4-player, and I think it's absolutely not a 4-player. But I like that just the way the resources work in that is so fun and smart and well done that I would call that almost fresh feeling, even though it wasn't. If I just describe it to you, it doesn't sound fresh.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, I can cheat a bit and say Ponzi Scheme.
Yay! Let's just talk about Ponzi schemes some more. I'm just gonna make vlogs about Ponzi Scheme till it comes out.
Yeah, pretty much. That's a Kickstarter that needs to run.
You guys, it's so good. It's so good, and I want everyone to play it.
Like I've been mildly disappointed that I haven't seen the Windrose resource mechanism from Macau in like another game, and then they used it in Ponzi Scheme for debt. So like you have this debt that you can never pay off, and it pops back up periodically, and the wheel helps you keep track of when that happens, and that's just delightful.
So how many dollars and what elbow do I need to get someone to buy new art from Macau and put it back out?
I I don't know. It's in the Ravensburger trap.
I know, and I hate that. And it's so, like you couldn't release it with the regular art still. Like it is not colorblind proof at all. Like
Right.
it is impossible to play if you are colorblind, and that sucks because that game is awesome.
Someone's mentioning 8-player Carcassonne, which reminds me.
No.
Well, I lived in the DC area. I went to this one gaming group that had a person who wanted to play every game at the maximum player count that said on the box all of the time. So like I started Kalis as I forget what the maximum player count for Kalis is, but that's definitely not the way to start out with that game.
It's 5.
Yeah, 5-player Kalis. No.
I like 4-player Kalis.
Yeah, and I can imagine that. I don't know. Like I can even believe a lot of times that the maximum player count is fine once everyone knows the game, but usually having more new players makes it for a rougher experience.
I think Kalos at 5 does work, but it is a different experience. I don't know if you've played it at 5, but it is lightning fast. Just stuff runs out really, really fast, and you can't play them like you do in any other player count.
Yeah.
Eric doesn't believe in max player counts.
Player counts are almost always a lie on one end or the other.
Right. I think generally they get one end correct. The 2 or the 5 is going to be correct, and it's about one play will usually tell you which side you want to play on.
Yeah, I'm getting better at figuring out from rulebook, but it's always hard.
I'm going to just try and divine it from now on, but
Magic
you kind of
says
depending on the designer. Sometimes I can probably tell you whether or not it should be 4 or 2. I don't like max player counts at all. I usually want to play the game in the middle of all the player counts. 3 to 4 is usually going to be best for a game because it's hard to design well for 2 players. It's hard to design well for 5 players. There's just mechanics that don't work on either end, and you can't do like bidding or something and tell me there's a 2-player element to it. I will not believe you. But,
yeah. Like I'm trying to think of a game that actually I like at its full range of player counts. It's just
Dominant Species.
Ooh.
Only at 6.
Oh my gosh, Dominant. That's a game that I need to play more. And
Yes.
I wanted to play more, but it was in this box of games that I lost for a few years when I was moving. That and it was when I found that box, I was like so both excited and embarrassed because it had like El Grande and Dominant Species in it and something else. And this was when El Grande hadn't been reprinted, so it's still going for like crazy pants dollars.
It's funny though, because in all the time that El Grande was out of print, I kept finding copies. I even bought one at a board game swap for like a reasonable price. I kept seeing them for crazy prices, but then I kept finding them. I gifted a couple. I bought one for myself. I'm glad that the new edition is out. I haven't played the new edition yet.
Yeah, neither have I. I'm fine with my cubes, thank you.
All right, I think we're gonna wrap it up. I am going to ask the stream, hey y'all, I'm doing my first podcast we're recording this coming Monday. It should be out in 2 weeks. It'll be the Chit Chat podcast. You will see it on my Twitter and on the website maplezincluded.com. Other things coming up in 2 weeks. I have another Games on the Rocks Friday night. It's 8 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time here. I will also put that up on the Twitters and things. If you don't follow me already, I don't know how you got here, but it's at MaggieBot, and that's probably good for all places. Nicholas, where to find you?
I'm on Twitter as Nicholas Co, and also on BGG, and on Instagram I am Move Alerts because someone possibly past me took my usual username.
You should try and recover it. See if you can.
I have, and I don't. Yeah, it's both hard for me to believe that I didn't grab it because I'm usually good at that. But it's possible it's associated with some email address that I no longer even have.
That's why I became MaggieBot instead of Maggie Dear. I lost some like important account or something. I just one day went, okay, fine, I'm making all my new accounts.
Yeah, I recently so I haven't played video games really in a very long time, and I recently started doing that. So I don't actually have my usual name on those. So I'm like move alert on a few things now, which is fun.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, thank you guys for coming and joining with us, and we'll see you later. Bye.
Bye bye.